Hey everybody, today we're going to be talking about specifically the basically how to manage your ADHD effectively without medication. So I have a question to ask you and I want you to put this in the comments if you could relate to this. Is if you've ever been feeling overwhelmed and your life is just out of control, or you just fear that maybe you might be losing your job because you're not concentrating very well. You're not focused. You're not present, despite even taking medication. Let me know in the comments if like your medication is just not helping with this aspect. In fact, it's making it worse, or you're dealing with the side effects. Let me know in the comments because, frankly, it's really not your fault. Because when it comes to medication, a lot of times that it is not targeting the right thing. And it can make things worse. And I'm going to explain here why and how we can manage our ADHD more effectively without having to rely on medication. Because the real problem is that ADHD is a body chemistry problem that's unique to each person and not just simply just fixing it with medication. So the common approach don't really work in for a lot of people. And not only that, these approaches often make the symptoms even worse. And here's why I say that is because the common options offered to people with ADHD is either prescription medication or the other option is CBT, which I'm not saying here to completely bash it, but a lot of times it's not addressing the root cause of your ADHD symptoms. And those stimulant medications, we're just given more and more. We have to do higher dosages of the medications. And a lot of times it can make things worse than better. Now, the thing that's interesting, especially from like this study, is that we're seeing a rise of increase of medications, and yet we're still seeing more issues of ADHD more ever in history throughout the entire world. And even if it isn't a stimulant medication, then we're switched over to maybe a non-stimulant medication. So maybe you've already experienced this, and you're probably feeling like, okay, is it unnecessary? Is it necessary? And are my doctors just using a guessing game, trying to just figure out what are you supposed to be doing? And so you feel like you're a guinea pig. Let me know in the comments if you've been feeling like that, because I know I certainly was when I was younger, experiencing this like everybody does, is that they just go from medication to medication, increase your dosages, try a different one, and you feel like they're just a guinea pig and they're just guessing here. Or the other options is like a non-prescription solutions, right? We will gravitate towards coffee, caffeine, energy drinks, sugary snacks, any kind of stimulants, right? And it might help like for a tad bit, but we hit these crashes, ups and downs, ups and downs. And so generally that's not always the best case. Or, remember that ADHD is a biochemistry problem. I want to make sure you guys understand that because it's unique to each person. Not one person is the same. And the wrong approach causes more problems. Okay. And it becomes, when we do the wrong approach, it becomes this downward spiral and this chain reaction that can make things worse over and over if we aren't addressing the root cause of the ADHD situation. So it also can contribute to causing your brain to slow down when we're on the wrong type of medication. In fact, our brain can sometimes stop producing our naturally dopamine and other different neurotransmitters. It can slow that down and becomes more sluggish. But especially for adults, and that's what I specialize is working with adults with ADHD, is that you become mentally and physically burnt out over time. And that's what I've seen over and over again. But the good news is I figured it out. It's a simple way to solve this problem. And I'll walk you through this training specifically of how you could do that. So really your success to really managing your ADHD without medication, there's three components to here. I'm going to address those three things. Because with this, you will retrain your brain to focus in a way that fits your unique biochemistry without the use of medication. And with this, you'll be in control of more of your ADHD symptoms. So you can actually enjoy a clearer thinking and being more productive and become the version that you want to be, the best version of yourself. And you'll be able to live the life that you want. Be, present in the relationships, have better work relationships, not worry that you're going to get fired, but actually get promoted and to be able to feel like you're in control and living the life to the fullest. Because the best part is you don't have to overhaul your life. You don't have to use any kind of time management or productivity hacks. That's all I'm not going to talk about here today. You don't have to spend time in therapy, even though that can be helpful, but that's all I'm going to be talking about today. and you don't have to rely on stimulant medications, right? This is a way that you could do this without necessarily having to use stimulant medications. And the only reason I can share this with you is because I've been through this, the good, the bad, and the ugly. If you don't know who I am, I'm Dr. Legrand, and I'm best known for helping adults with their ADHD to gain control of their focus and productivity so they can live life on their own terms and in a more natural way. So I graduated from Bastyr University. It's a naturopathic medical school. And even though I'm a sought after expert in this area, I want you to know that things certainly weren't always this way. Let me show you what I mean. When I was a kid, different. And maybe a lot of you guys experience this too. And maybe some of you guys aren't diagnosed with ADHD, but that's okay. I mean, I work with a lot of people that don't have the diagnosis, but maybe as a kid you noticed this, is that you were kind of different and it was a little bit hard to make friends and you were made fun of and you got into trouble a lot. That was me. And the other thing that was a challenge is that at school, academics was a big challenge for me. Like even my younger siblings were able to read before I could. I was way behind in school and I felt dumb. And certainly kids were not nice about it too. And so they kind of repeat that. And that really made it difficult for me to trying to figure this out. And like I was saying, like studying was a challenge for me because of my ADHD. And I also had dyslexia as well. And, you know, I was put on medication. But what I noticed is that when I was on medication, it would help me focus, but my personality was lost. I felt like a zombie. I didn't like the side effects. And then it was inconsistent. And so I certainly just did not like this situation. And so even when I was like in, I started getting better, but I still really didn't pin it down. Even when I finally got into medical school, I had to reach out to other doctors, but more functional medicine doctors that understood the imbalances of truly what was going on instead of just throwing another medication at me. And it wasn't until I did look at these different functional medicine doctors to help me clearly understand what was truly wrong. And it was that body chemistry imbalances. And when I saw the different labs that they did, it was really surprising to see all the different imbalances that I had all my life. And that was never addressed. And it just opened my eyes and clearly saw what was truly going on. And so once I was able to see that, I knew exactly what treatment to implement, and it made all the difference. I was able to focus and I was able to study more efficiently. And when I was studying, it seemed to be easier. And I was able to remember things and I was more present and things were more consistent. My stress level started to go down. My energy started to improve. Everything started to improve because I finally was addressing what was always wrong to begin with. And what really helped me, like when I was working with these doctors, is they helped me understand that like most ADHD symptoms are caused by hidden imbalances that can be healed through naturally. And to fix these imbalances and the symptoms to improve to go away completely. And so that's where that was my big light bulb moment where I realized that I didn't always have to be in this situation my whole life. And so I felt like a new sense of excitement and optimism. And I felt more confident about taking boards, like my medical boards. That was the thing that I was really concerned about because I felt like my ADHD was holding me back and what I could accomplish after them. And so I was able to pass my medical boards because I was concerned about that because I was having a baby on the way. I was newly married and I got to make sure I had to pass this because I had to provide. And so I've been able to successfully open up my practice for now it's been about 10 plus years. Now we go virtual now where it's not a brick and mortar anymore, but, and to be a father and a husband and to be present with my loved ones. So you and I are similar. You know, listen, I'm no superhero. I'm just a regular guy who went through hell and back. So if I can do it, you can certainly can too as well. Now, imagine, when you can focus 100% on work and in life, like what could you do with that? Let me know in the comments. Like, what could you do that if you did have all those things? You know, because you now know that ADHD and HD symptoms are caused by unique problems with your body chemistry. And the three key steps that I'm going to go over is that there's really three discoveries that you need to know about ADHD if you want to control your ADHD symptoms and optimize your brain performance. So the very first really discovery in this whole three-step process, like it's called the focus mind formula, is fixing your symptoms starts with fixing the imbalances, if you didn't catch that on. So if you think about it, our ADHD brain itself can be a little slow because there's imbalances. And when we try whether that's therapy, coaching, watching different YouTube videos and hacks to do, using apps, trying to improve this. When we're going through this brain, our output's not that great. It's because we got to fix this first if we want any of these kind of hacks or coaching or therapy to even work effectively, right? So when we switch and actually identify what's wrong, looking at lab testing to see where the true imbalances are, and then fix them to improve and optimize it, it's like fast speed internet, right? So this was supposed to represent, I missed that. This is supposed to be, if you remember dial up internet, our ADHD brains can be slow because they're not working efficiently. For those who are too young to remember, it was basically really, really slow. It'd take like, I swear, like 5 minutes for a page to load. I hated it. But when it's fast speed internet, then our brain can work efficiently because we've identified through labs to see what's out of balance and then optimize it. And then we're able to accomplish a lot. Okay. And that's because when doctors are using medication, they're not understanding what is out of balance. They're usually just addressing maybe dopamine. Maybe they're putting on a medication for serotonin or for GABA. But what about all these other things that could be out of balance? I mean, look at this. That's the thing. There's so much being missed that could be the problem, but it's not being looked at. And that's what's being missed. And that's why you're not seeing the results. And that's why you can't use non-medicated routes because you're going at it completely blind. But when you know what's out of balance, then you can use different supplementation, different nutrition to improve your ADHD without having to use medication. So let me show you an example of a patient of mine, Jen. She was taking medications. She was exhausted, unfocused still, even on medication. She couldn't keep up with her work demands, and she was having marital problems. And when I started looking at her chemistry, I noticed there were some big issues. One, her cortisol levels were really low. It's really hard to have energy and focus and motivation throughout the day when your cortisol levels are plummeted, just like Jen's was. Not only that, her hormones, other hormones were off, like progesterone. It's really to have her mood was all over the place, her focus was all over the place, and it made it very difficult. And some other things too is that even though she was taking medication, her dopamine levels were still low, but also her tyrosine levels were low, which the medication wasn't addressing. So that needed to be addressed. The other thing here too is her norepinephrine levels were still low, epinephrine and serotonin. Those weren't being addressed, even with on medication. And so once I knew this, I knew exactly what to implement. I knew what supplementation to implement, what nutrition and lifestyle implements to implement to help improve these levels. And once we did that, I kid you not, within just 2 weeks later, all of a sudden her energy and focus improved. She had happier mood. Her boss noticed the difference. That's the thing that that there is a change when others notice it. Even her husband did. Her marriage was saved. And she was able to come off her medication over about a month's time. And that is where the power of this comes in, is when you can truly identify what is truly wrong. Okay. So the first step of this is you got to discover what are the imbalances first before using any kind of natural treatment if you want to manage your ADHD without medications. You have to know this first, like myself and like many of my patients. Now, the second discovery is let's not blame just dopamine because it's not always a dopamine problem. And that's what I've noticed is because, yes, dopamine, it's a neurotransmitter. It helps with mental and focus and clarity, and it gives us motivation drive. And you saw with that previous patient that it was that she did have, but you noticed that there was other issues than just dopamine, right? And like I told you before, there's other things to look at other than dopamine. Because if we just think it's a dopamine problem, then we're just using the medication and just where the medication only targets dopamine, right? And so then we're on more and more medications, doing the same thing, just a little different, but still just only targeting dopamine when it isn't always just a dopamine problem. Because low dopamine levels, I have noticed, is actually less than half of the problem when it comes with focus issues. When I'm doing all these tests, it's not always a dopamine problem. And stimulants and medications can raise dopamine levels. Like let's say your dopamine is too high. It can make things worse, much, much worse. Feel agitated, irritated, and you can't focus. You can't function. It's just not a good situation to be in. Because if you've never been explained this, when you take an ADHD medication, what it's doing it's blocking the transporter to communicate back and forth because it blocks this. That helps pretty much slow down a good balance of when it releases dopamine and so forth. And when it blocks that, it actually will slow the production of naturally producing dopamine. We've seen this. And then you end up running on more on empty because as far as when it comes to having low dopamine and taking a stimulant, it may help initially, but eventually it won't work. And you have to go on another medication or increase your dosage, as many of you probably have experienced, just like I did. And if you didn't have a dopamine problem to begin with, it's very likely you'll develop one over time with on the medication. So to kind of show you this, like there's a study here where they found out that people that were on, actually they put them on, some medications, is that they found that their brain dopamine levels only were at 80% capacity. So there was about a 20% dip of long-term use, especially after a persistent use of 6 months or more. So that's where it's kind of concerning. It's like, okay, if there's a 20% dip, and that's because eventually it kind of starts slowing down. And because your brain is blocking those communication processes when you're on the medication. The other thing here too, I'll talk about just kind of stimulants is what towards is maybe caffeine. Now, caffeine, it's okay to do some stimulants, but when you overdo it, what they have noticed is that your cortisol, what they did is when they test the cortisol levels, is it started to deplete. They started seeing cortisol levels decline versus the control group when you overdid the caffeine. So we can't just like switch over to different stimulants and hope that could be the solution. Because your brain adrenals, when we use stimulants, whether that's coffee, caffeine, certain medications, it's like, think of it as like a sponge. You're asking a lot from the body, and there's so much juice that it can produce for the body. A little bit of stimulant is fine, but when you overdo it, then you reach complete burnout. And that's not a good situation to be in. So I want to give you an example of this, who this happened to, Mike. So I want you guys to meet Mike. He was also on ADHD medications, but it wasn't working for him. He was losing energy and focus, had a job, but wasn't performing well. Very stressed and anxious, and his sleep was terrible. So when I ran his test and saw the results, I wasn't surprised the way he felt he did. And he was put on the wrong types of medications, and that was causing towards his imbalances and was making things worse. So let me show you that. So one thing is this right here. And this is where I see about 90% of my patients I've tested have this issue. It's an excitatory neurotransmitter. It's called phenylethylamine. He was low in that. And ADHD medications do not address this at all. And this can be a culprit of why you're not focused or motivated, because this is low. Some other things I also noticed. This right here. So he's on an ADHD medication and his dopamine levels are high. No wonder he felt anxious, stressed, and he couldn't sleep well. He was on the wrong medication. It was making things worse. His epinephrine levels were low, so he couldn't manage his stress. But also, he was on an antidepressant, and his serotonin levels are high. When you're on an antidepressant, you can have what we call serotonin syndrome, and that's why he was feeling agitated, stressed, couldn't sleep, and would just make things worse. Even his GABA levels were high, and that can make things worse too when it comes to stress. So when we saw that, there was one other thing I also needed to look at. His cortisol was spiked. The guy could not function. It's not a good situation to be in when your cortisol levels are spiked, with everything else being spiked. And if that's the case, we got to start lowering that. So once I saw this, I started lowering things, using different supplementation, starting to cut back on the medication because it was making things worse. And he was able to finally breathe again. He was able to not feel so anxious and stressed. But some other things, also looking at different micronutrients that I also identified, was his vitamin D levels were low, which contributed a lot to his low energy. He also had vitamin B3 levels that are low, which is very important for the neurotransmitters, and other things that were low too, vitamin K, more for his other health issues. And so as soon as we addressed all these different imbalances, with 1 month's time, his mood, energy improved significantly, his sleep improved drastically, he got through his task at work, His boss also noticed a huge difference and did not feel that anxious all the time anymore because we identified what was truly wrong. And he was able to stop taking the ADHD medication because the ADHD medication was making things worse, as you just saw. So, the third thing to this is all about restoring balance. Once we've identified the discovery of what is out of balance, then we focus on restoring balance. And that is how you can use non-stimulant medications or any kind of medication to managing your ADHD. Now, there's a third component to this. So, the third discovery that I discovered is that when you know your unique imbalances, you can easily fix them without medication. And this is how to kind of bring this home. Is because your symptoms could be other things than it just being the brain and can be sometimes digestive imbalances. There's been studies on this where basically our gut microbiome produces a lot of our neurotransmitters. In fact, about 90 to 95% of a lot of our neurotransmitters are made in the gut. And if there's issues in the digestive system, it needs to be addressed. Also, your symptoms can be a nutritional imbalance, just like you saw with the previous client. He had low vitamin D levels, low vitamin B3 levels. And so a lot of times we need to improve our nutrition, improve those things. Also, a big one is it can be amino acid imbalance. That's another one that I've seen. There's been studies on this where they have noticed that about they saw that there was a huge, basically a total percentage of the patients showing a significant improvement when they addressed the amino acids that were out of balance, that were precursors to serotonin and dopamine. So we should be paying attention to this. And that's where I have been addressing, is looking at the root cause, and an amino acid imbalance can be the culprit to all this, or the different nutritional imbalances or digestive, right? We got to look at the body as a whole. We can't just think it's just a brain problem, but it's look at the body as a whole. Okay. To kind of take this home, let me show you an example of another patient of mine. Meet Greg. He was a owned a construction company, but he struggled for years with his ADHD. He has severe digestive problems, decreasing energy, started to lose his memory, and his employees started to notice that he was off. He wasn't focused. Things were just getting worse. And so we ran some digestive panels, and sure enough, his gut microbiome was not optimal. And so that can cause issues especially with being focused and energized. His cortisol levels were really low. That was a problem. No wonder he had low energy. Also, his testosterone DHEA levels were low. So it's good to look at hormones too, because that could be the reason why you have low energy and you also can't focus and you're just all over the place. But there's also key micronutrients that I also found out is one, his choline. Choline is very important when it comes to memory. It's very common that I see with adults, especially if you're in your 40s and above, we'll start seeing choline or even serine levels start to diminish, and that's where you're starting to have memory issues. It's also the first signs that we'll see for early prevention for things like dementia and Alzheimer's disease. So I always like to run this to prevent from this. But on top of that, he also had low glutamine levels, which are very important amino acid for also neurotransmitters. His CoQ10 levels were low, which also are important for energy, to producing energy throughout all our cells. But the thing that was really shocking is seeing all these levels low. Yeah. So we're talking about the whole dopamine pathway, serotonin pathway, GABA. I mean, everything low. No wonder the guy couldn't function. This was a big eye opener for him and even for me, because I don't usually will see all these levels low. But now we knew exactly what to implement. And we implemented the right supplementation, nutrition, detoxification protocols, lifestyle changes. And once we did that, I mean, because he was so low, he noticed difference within just 2 weeks of his treatment plan. He had more energy. His digestive problems improved. His memory was more sharp again. He was back on his A game and being more productive. He felt his younger self again. And his employees noticed that he was back to his self and energy, and actually better than he was before. And this is the beauty of how you truly can manage your ADHD without medication, because it's about revitalizing your health. Once you discover the imbalances and restore the imbalance, then you can implement revitalizing your overall health, not just your ADHD, but your overall health, and experience life to its fullest and enjoy life how it should. I mean, just like many of my patients, like, for example, Justin, he worked with us. He says, I'm leaving a completely different life right now. And I never imagined I could feel this good. I don't have depression anymore. My anxiety reduced probably 85%. I don't have many anger issues any longer. And I'm off my ADHD medications. Or even Shaheen, he said 2 weeks ago, I already feel better in terms of mood, attention. The new supplements have a great impact on my patience and managing my thoughts. Or even Christopher, he says, dude, today was unbelievable with supplements updates like being on Vyvanse without having to have the heart issues. So being off the medication, it was so easy. I stay focused and the words came easily. Or even Scott, he says, being just on a couple months with this process, I can feel, I could say I have a big difference. I'm calm, yet a moment, in the moment and focused. When my mind is wandering, Dr. Gran gave me an excellent piece of advice on how to turn around and put it to good use. Dr. Gran has tailored supplements specifically for my needs. After the first week, I felt different in my focus. Dr. Gran is intelligent and coach, really knows his stuff, and I recommend his program. Or even just like Jetty, he said, when I first started the program, I was completely dependent on medications for motivation, caffeine for energy, and it was like a band-aid. I was not operating at my fullest capacity, and I would research the best supplements and take them a bunch, and then with no results. It wasn't until I found Dr. Grant and understood the importance of testing into the deficiencies and started to see a big difference in my day and my life. Now I am a good amount of energy, motivation, and focus throughout most of the days, and the difference is a night and day difference. Okay, and then another one, Eric, same thing. He also mentioned about a big night and day difference, improved there. Aaron, just implementing it just from a day, I've noticed a large improvement in my focus and concentration and being able to carry on through tasks. And this stuff really works. Or even just, I'm doing well and on my treatment plan, I have feelings much better, more focused, emotions are better and controlled. Or Shashi, like she said, definitely can focus better and got a lot of work done since starting the program, more energy throughout the day. So if you would like, to get the same kind of results like Jen, Mike, Greg, and many of my other patients that I've worked with, I'd love to help you out because doing this alone, it's not easy. It's a difficult process. The biochemistry, is so complex because here's why I explain it. It's because you need to really find the source of your imbalances, like we just talked about. You need a customized plan. You need someone who's going to hold you accountable to be able to help you get the results. So here's exactly how I can help you out. My health experts and I have set aside time to speak with you personally, to actually book an appointment with me or with one of my health experts to really help you get results. It's called the Focus Mindset Strategy Session. So on this Focus Mindset Strategy Session, we'll put together a specific plan for your situation to help you have better focus so that you can finally excel in life with your ADHD. And here's exactly how we'll do this together. First, we'll uncover what's behind your ADHD symptoms. What is the root cause of the issues? And it's that blind spot. And it's most likely something that you have never been told. Then we'll customize a plan that will get you unstuck. And then finally, we'll determine if it makes sense working more closely together to go more in depth, do lab testing, and do in-depth treatment together. So all you got to do is you just book and purchase your appointment. That's a link in the description below. It's a 45-minute one-on-one personalized strategy session with me. That's the first step. And then after that, if it makes sense, move forward with more in-depth lab testing and doing customized treatment plans to make sense after the initial consultation. Then we'll do that. So all you got to do is just click on the link in the description below. And thank you guys so much for attending. And I'll see you guys all on the next live stream. Thanks. Bye.